The silent invasion, the morning bells of Viridian Prime rang across the crystal cities as ambassador. Crix walked through the gardens of eternal peace. The blue-skinned diplomat had served the Galactic Harmony Council for 30 years, and this was his favorite time of day. The twin suns cast rainbow patterns through the crystalline trees, while gentle creatures from dozens of worlds played in the phosphorescent grass. The galaxy had known peace for over 2 centuries. 47 species worked together in perfect harmony, sharing knowledge and resources. Wars were ancient history, spoken of only in dusty archives. The greatest challenge most worlds faced was deciding which of their neighbors to invite to cultural festivals. Crix paused beside a fountain where Quillan children splashed with young Altarians. Their laughter echoed off the crystal walls, a sound that never failed to make him smile. This was what the Council had built together. This was worth protecting. His communicator buzzed softly. "Ambassador, we have an urgent transmission from Research Station Nexus 7, came the voice of his aide. Yella Crix sighed. Research stations always had urgent news about some new discovery. Put them through. The holographic image of Dr. Zenth appeared before him. The elderly, crystalline scientists, usually calm demeanor, replaced by obvious distress. "Ambassador Crix, we have detected something unprecedented. Energy signatures from beyond the galactic rim, unlike anything in our databases. Unknown energy signatures are discovered regularly," Dr. Crix replied gently. "What makes this different?" Dr. Zenth's crystalline form flickered nervously. "Sir, these readings indicate massive movement. Thousands of objects, possibly ships, approaching from dark space. They'll reach the outer colonies within days." Crix felt his first stirring of unease. "Have you attempted communication?" "That's the problem, Ambassador. We tried every known frequency, every diplomatic protocol. There's no response. But sir, there's something else. The energy patterns, they're not mechanical. They're organic, alive." The peaceful morning suddenly felt different. Crix looked around the garden, seeing it with new eyes. "Doctor, I want you to triple-check your readings. I'm calling an emergency session of the Council." 6 hours later, the great assembly hall of the Galactic Harmony Council buzzed with worried voices. Representatives from dozens of species filled the crystalline chamber, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Despite their differences, they all shared the same expression of concern. "Fellow beings," Crix addressed the assembly, "we face an unprecedented situation. Our most advanced research station has detected what appears to be a massive fleet approaching from beyond our galaxy." High Counselor Nearith of the Aquatic Collective raised one of her flowing appendages. "Ambassador, in 200 years of peace, we have always found peaceful solutions. Surely these newcomers can be reasoned with." Murmurs of agreement rippled. Through the chamber, these were beings who had never known true conflict, who believed that all intelligent life shared their values of cooperation and understanding. "I share your optimism," Crix replied, "but we must prepare for all possibilities. I recommend we dispatch our finest diplomats to establish contact." As the Council debated, thousands of light years away, the first outer colonies began to go. Dark, the mining colony of Ashtar 3, was home to 50,000 beings from 12 different species. They worked together, extracting rare minerals from the planet's crust, their differences forgotten in the shared purpose of building a better galaxy. Foreman Grack, a hulking Taurian, was reviewing the day's production reports when his assistant burst into the office. "Sir, We have ships approaching. Unknown configuration. Grak lumbered to the observation deck, his massive form moving with surprising grace. Through the transparent steel windows, he could see dark shapes descending from the star-filled sky. The ships were unlike anything in the galactic database, organic-looking, pulsing with sickly green light. "Open a channel," Grak ordered. Standard greeting protocols. The communication officer, a delicate whisper from the ethereal nebula, worked frantically at her console. "Sir, they're not responding to any frequency, but I'm detecting something else. The ships, ... they're scanning our minds." Before Grak could respond, the first ship landed. It wasn't a ship at all, but a living creature the size of a building. Its surface rippled like infected flesh, and from its depths emerged smaller creatures that moved with horrible purpose. The first colonist they touched simply stopped. Not dead, not unconscious, but empty. The being's eyes went blank, and it began walking toward the ship with mechanical precision. "Emergency broadcast," Grak roared. "All stations, we are under attack by unknown entities. They're taking out people." The message reached the nearest council relay station just as Ashta 3 went completely silent. Within hours, 6 more colonies had fallen. The pattern was always the same. The organic ships would arrive, scan the population, and then systematically harvest their consciousness. The bodies remained alive, but the minds were gone, absorbed into something vast and hungry. On Viridian Prime, Ambassador Crix watched the reports with growing horror. The assembly hall had become a crisis center, with representatives frantically trying to contact their home worlds. 17 colonies now, reported Dr. Zenth via hologram, and they're moving faster. Each world they ... consume ... seems to make them stronger. High Counselor Nearith was visibly shaken. "This is impossible. No species could be so cruel, so wasteful. Why don't they communicate? Why don't they negotiate?" "Maybe," Crix said quietly, "because they don't see us as equals. Maybe they see us as food." The word hung in the air like a curse. Food. In a galaxy where even the most primitive species had been uplifted and welcomed. The concept of intelligent beings treating other intelligent beings as resources was unthinkable. "We need help," Crix continued. "We need to contact every species, every world. If we stand together." "Sir," interrupted Eula, "I've been monitoring communications across the galaxy. There are rumors of a species that lives beyond the rim. They call themselves humans, and they supposedly come from a world so harsh that other species can't survive there." Crix had heard whispers of such beings. They were said to be warriors, survivors of a planet that had tried to kill them every day of their evolution. Most dismissed them as legend. "Can you establish contact?" he asked. "I'm trying, sir. But if they exist, they're very far away. And sir, the signals I'm detecting from their direction, ... they're military in nature." As if summoned by their conversation, a new voice crackled through the communication system. The voice was clear, strong, and spoke in a language that the translation systems had to work hard to interpret. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Grid. We have been monitoring the situation in your galaxy. We are prepared to assist." The assembly hall fell silent. After 2 centuries of peace, they were about to meet their first warriors. Admiral Crix replied, his voice shaking slightly, "We are grateful for any assistance. But I must warn you, this enemy is unlike anything we've encountered. They consume consciousness itself." There was a pause before the human voice responded, and when it did, there was something in it that made even the bravest council members shiver. It was the sound of a predator that had found its prey. "Ambassador, we appreciate the warning, but you should know something about humans. We've been fighting monsters since the day we learned to make fire, and we've never lost." The transmission ended, leaving the assembly hall in stunned silence. In the distance, more colonies went dark, their populations absorbed into the growing Shadowmoor collective. But for the first time since the crisis began, some of the council members felt something they had almost forgotten. Hope. 3 days later, long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching from the direction of the Outer Rim. The signatures were unlike anything in the galactic database's massive, heavily armed and moving with deadly purpose. Dr. Alina Vasquez stood in the research bay of the battleship Prometheus, studying the data they had gathered about the Shadowmoor threat. As the fleet's lead xenobiologist, she was humanity's best hope of understanding what they were about to face. "Admiral," she reported to the bridge, "the enemy's behavior patterns suggest a hive mind structure. They're not just consuming consciousness, they're integrating it. Each mind they absorb makes the collective stronger, smarter." Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the comm system. "Doctor, can they be stopped?" Alina looked at the data scrolling across her screens. Thousands of worlds, billions of minds, all consumed by something that treated intelligence as a resource to be harvested. "I don't know, Admiral, but I know this. If we don't stop them here, they'll spread across the galaxy like a plague, and once they've absorbed enough minds, they'll be unstoppable." "Then we stop them here," Chen replied simply. "All ships, prepare for battle. We're about to show the galaxy what Deathworlders do when threatened." As the human fleet raced toward the battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy, the Shadowmoor collective sensed their approach. For the first time since beginning their feast, they encountered something they had never experienced before. Uncertainty. The Deathworlder response. The space around Kepler Station had become a graveyard. Hundreds of council ships floated dead in the void, their crews consumed by the Shadowmoor collective. The station itself was under siege, its crystalline defenses cracking under the assault of living ships that pulsed with stolen consciousness. Ambassador Crix stood in the station's command center, watching their final defense fleet being systematically destroyed. The Shadowmoor had evolved, learning from each mind they consumed, becoming more efficient with every victory. "Sir," reported Commander Zaranine, the station's crystalline defense coordinator, "we've lost contact with the Harmony fleet. Estimated time until station breach, 23 minutes. Crix nodded grimly. They had done everything they could. The evacuation ships had launched hours ago, carrying the last free minds from this sector. Soon, the Shadowmoor would add another station to their growing empire of emptiness. All remaining personnel to the core chambers, Crix ordered. "We'll make our final stand there." As the crew prepared for the end, something impossible happened. The Shadowmoor ships stopped advancing. "Commander," reported the sensor officer, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching from Vector 7. Unknown configuration." On the main screen, space itself seemed to tear open. Ships emerged from what the Council species called hyperspace, but these vessels were unlike anything in the galactic database. They were dark, angular, and radiated a kind of controlled menace that made even the Shadowmoor pause. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Grid," came a voice over the communication system. "Kepler Station, please respond." Crix stepped forward, his voice shaking with disbelief. "Admiral, this is Ambassador Crix. We thought. You a legend. We get that a lot," Chen replied with what sounded like grim humor. Ambassador, we're going to need you to clear the area. What we're about to do isn't going to be pretty. The human fleet spread out in formations that defied everything the Council knew about space combat. Instead of the elegant, synchronized movements of Council ships, the human vessels moved like a pack of predators. Each one independent, yet perfectly coordinated. Captain Marcus Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the assault cruiser, defiant, watching the Shadowmoor ships through the view screen. These weren't just enemy vessels. They were perverted amalgamations of consumed minds, living monuments to the extinction of entire species. All stations, battle ready, Rodriguez ordered. Remember, these things feed on consciousness. Don't let them into your heads. His crew nodded grimly. They had trained for this moment for months, ever since the first distress calls had reached Earth. Unlike the peaceful Council species, humans had never forgotten how to fight. Earth itself had taught them that lesson every day for millions of years. The Shadowmoor ships suddenly surged forward, their organic hulls pulsing with malevolent intelligence. As they closed distance, tendrils of psychic energy reached out toward the human fleet. Seeking minds to consume, they found something they had never encountered before. Dr. Alina Vasquez monitored the engagement from her research station, watching as the Shadowmoor attempted to penetrate human consciousness. The results were unlike anything in her data. Admiral, she reported, they're having trouble with our minds. The psychic intrusion is failing. Why? Chen's voice crackled through the cum. Because we're unpredictable, Alina replied with growing excitement. Every species they've consumed has been peaceful, logical, cooperative, but humans, ... We're chaotic. We think in patterns they can't understand or predict. On the Defiance Bridge, Rodriguez felt the alien presence trying to crawl into his mind. For a moment, he almost pitied the Shadowmoor. They were trying to understand a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and countless other catastrophes by refusing to give up, refusing to follow patterns, refusing to be anything other than stubbornly, brilliantly human. All ships, Rodriguez ordered, implement Protocol Chaos. What followed was unlike any space battle in galactic history. The human ships didn't follow traditional tactics. They improvised, adapted, and changed their strategies moment by moment. One ship would charge directly at a Shadowmoor vessel, then suddenly veer away. Another would appear to retreat, only to loop back and attack from an unexpected angle. The Shadowmoor, who had grown accustomed to absorbing the tactical knowledge of their enemies, found themselves facing opponents whose tactics couldn't be absorbed, because they were being invented in real time. Commander Lisa Park, aboard the engineering vessel Prometheus, watched the battle with growing understanding. Admiral, I think I know why they can't process us. They're a hive mind, they think collectively, but humans, ... We're individuals. Each one of us is unpredictable in our own way. Can you weaponize that? Chen asked. Glisa smiled grimly. Already. On it? Working within human speed, she began broadcasting a signal that carried the essence of human consciousness, not thoughts or memories, but the raw, chaotic creativity that had driven humanity to the stars. The signal spread through the Shadowmoor network like a virus, introducing randomness into their collective consciousness. The effect was immediate. Shadowmoor ships began to behave erratically, their perfect coordination breaking down as individual voices began to emerge from the collective. For the first time in their existence, the consumed minds were fighting back. On Kepler Station, Ambassador Crix watched in amazement as the tide of battle turned. The Shadowmaw, who had seemed unstoppable, were suddenly vulnerable. Their ships collided with each other, their weapons fired randomly, and their psychic attacks became weak and unfocused. "Commander Zaranine," he called to his crystalline colleague, "are you seeing this?" The crystalline being's form pulsed with excitement. "The humans, ... They're not just fighting the Shadowmaw, they're liberating the consumed minds. Every species they've absorbed is starting to reassert its individuality." Dr. Vasquez had reached the same conclusion. "Admiral, the signal is working. But it's not enough. We need to target their source." "What source?" Chen demanded. "The Prime Shadowmaw. There has to be a central consciousness controlling the collective. If we can find it, we can cut the head off the snake," Rodriguez finished. "I'm reading a massive energy signature at the center of their formation. That has to be it." The Prime Shadowmaw was a creature beyond normal understanding. It had grown by consuming the consciousness of billions of beings, becoming something that transcended individual existence. It was perfect collective thought made manifest, the ultimate expression of unified purpose. It was also about to meet its worst nightmare. "All ships converge on the Prime," Chen ordered. "This ends now." The human fleet broke formation, each ship racing toward the massive entity at the center of the Shadowmaw fleet. The Prime lashed out with psychic energy that could have shattered the minds of any other species. Instead, it met human stubbornness, human creativity, and human refusal to accept the impossible. Rodriguez led the charge, his ship diving directly toward the Prime Shadowmaw. As psychic tendrils wrapped around his consciousness, he did something that no consumed mind had ever done. He laughed. "You want to know what makes us different?" he asked the entity that was trying to absorb him. "We don't just survive impossible odds, we thrive on them. We turn them into advantages. And right now, you're about to learn why Earth is called a death world." The Prime Shadowmaw recoiled, its perfect collective consciousness encountering something it couldn't process. Human minds weren't just chaotic, they were adaptable. They could face the impossible and not just survive, but find ways to win. Dr. Vasquez activated her final weapon, a psychic resonance amplifier that broadcast the full spectrum of human experience across the Shadowmaw network. Love, hate, hope, fear, creativity, destruction, cooperation, competition, all the contradictions that made humanity what it was. The effect was catastrophic for the hive mind. Consciousness that had been absorbed and integrated for millennia suddenly remembered what it was like to be individual, to be unique, to be free. The Prime Shadowmaw's scream echoed across space as billions of minds simultaneously rejected its control. The collective consciousness, built on the foundation of perfect unity, shattered like glass. The Shadowmaw ships went dark, one by one, their crews suddenly remembering who they had been before being consumed. The vast network of stolen consciousness collapsed, leaving behind only the memory of what had been lost and the hope of what could be rebuilt. On Kepler Station, Ambassador Crix watched as the human fleet regrouped, their ships scarred but victorious. Around them, the liberated minds of dozens of species were beginning to reassert themselves, their identities slowly returning after eons of collective imprisonment. Admiral Chen Crix called over the communication system on behalf of the Galactic Harmony Council. We cannot thank you enough." Chen's voice carried a warmth that hadn't been there during the battle. "Ambassador, you don't need to thank us. This is what we do. This is what we've always done." "But why?" Crix asked. "You didn't know us. We were strangers from across the galaxy. There was a pause before Chen answered. Because that's what makes us human. We protect those who can't protect themselves. We fight for those who don't know how to fight. And we never, ever give up. As the human fleet began rescue operations for the liberated mines, Ambassador Crix realized that the galaxy had changed forever. They had learned that peace was not the absence of conflict, but the presence of those willing to fight for it. The Galactic Harmony Council would never be the same. They had allies now, strange, dangerous, wonderful allies, who came from a world that had tried to kill them every day and had somehow transformed that struggle into strength. Commander Zaranine approached Crix, her crystalline form glowing with newfound understanding. Ambassador, I think we need to redefine what we mean by harmony. True harmony isn't everyone thinking the same way. It's different voices finding ways to work together. Crix nodded, looking out at the human ships as they worked to free minds that had been trapped for millennia. Yes, he said quietly, I think we have much to learn from our new friends. In the distance, the last of the Shadowmoor collective faded into memory, defeated not by superior firepower or advanced technology, but by the simple human refusal to accept defeat. The galaxy was safe, and it would never forget the species that had taught it the difference between peace and surrender. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they had brought with them something the galaxy had forgotten it needed: hope backed by the will to fight for it.